now we're on the correct session, Elemental 6, and we've only got 2 more. So we're doing make and receive offers today. Wednesday, we will do negotiate the deal. And then Thursday, we'll finish up with financial basics. So hope that it's been a really good session for you guys. I really have enjoyed this. So I hope it's helped y'all's business. Let's see. Okay, so we know what successful agents do every day. They grow their business and run their business. And today we're going to talk about through make and receive offers, showing buyers houses and negotiating contracts. And then tomorrow we're going to do more of the negotiate part of it. We're going to practice scripts that you use throughout the process and learn how to set the stage for a positive negotiation experience. Because Vicki, I'm sure you will agree, it can sometimes be not positive. Yeah, it can have a downturn. All right, so the offer process. This will give you an idea of the steps you take to get to the point where you're ready to negotiate an offer with the seller's agent. All right, so once the buyer has found their perfect home, the seller starts looking forward to concluding the sale of the property. This is where the fun begins. This is the offer process, and this can be a loop. It doesn't have to just be linear. So the buyer makes the offer, the seller responds in one of 3 ways. What are the 3 ways? On the screen.
Counter, accept, or reject.
Right. And so if they counter the offer, that opens up negotiation, right? And you go around until an offer is accepted. So when you have the offer accepted, it begins the contract to close process. And then when the offer is rejected, that makes you kind of go back around again. So the buyer agent contacts the listing agent to figure out why it was rejected. And maybe you can go over to the counter offer after you have more of a better understanding, or you move on to another property. Has anybody experienced this offer process so far?
I had one going on this weekend. They countered, and which is, the counter was still good. So I think we have some worked out, but we did. And a lot of times people won't, sometimes people will kind of like to do verbal and then email. And so because they don't like messy contracts. So they like to come to a meeting of the minds before they actually put it on the contract.
Well, and what's important there, Vicki, what you said was it's a meeting of the minds.
Right.
And so this process here, you have to with your buyer, you have to communicate with the selling agent, and the selling agent has to be able to communicate with the seller, right? Everybody has to figure out how to talk to each other so that we understand and we can come to a meeting of the minds, right? And so where are the energy and the emotions during this process? Are they low or are they high?
High.
They're high.
Yes.
High. And that's why it's even more important that not only are you trying to have one conversation with potentially 5 or 6 people, right? Everybody's got to come into a common language, but the emotions are high. The buyer's ready to buy. They're passionate about it. The seller wants to sell, but they're really emotional about their property, their home. You know, people have a really close emotional bond with their home. So you have to be able to have a conversations when emotions are running high. And one thing I learned from Jimmy Ann was, you know, even if the barn is burning, you, the agent, cannot act like it is. You have to be the calming force, and you have to just move through the process, right? You can't, when they're going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, you cannot be going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. To your spouse or to your accountability partner, to your coach or whoever, yes, but to them, you have to be calm to their high emotions. When there's excitement, joy, anxiety, and patience, the professional representative, you must remain calm, reassuring, in control, and communicate everything to your client. I'd like to note that we will be covering the negotiation aspect of the offer process, but we are going to cover that, like I said, on Wednesday in our next session. So now that we have an idea of how it works, let's see what we can do to prepare ourselves to write the offer. Okay, a little preparation goes a long way, guys, and that's what we keep talking about. Knowing the market, knowing what's going on. That way you become the valuable resource. Okay. Here is the checklist, and it can be found in the Elemental Toolkit. Let me go find that really quickly, guys. Let's see. I did not have that printed, but it may work better for you guys when I just pull it up on the screen. That way you can see it as well.
I just have to say while you're doing that,
Yeah, go ahead.
like you said, I'm in the middle of an offer. And so Miss Vicky has been the one I've been running to, crying, frantic, but I think she's made me look very professional in front of my buyer.
Yeah. Right. That's the person you run to going, ah, you don't to the client. Okay, let's see. Here we go.
Okay.
You guys cannot see my screen yet, though, can you?
Not yet.
I lost you guys. I know y'all can see me, but I cannot find you. There you are. Okay, perfect. Okay, now we're looking for a checklist for the offer. Open house safety. It says it's 72 pages, but it looks like there's a lot of script. Well, you guys, I surely do not see this, how to write an offer checklist. Let me go back to the top. Let's see. Okay. Walkthrough room, script book, resources, job aid, plan your success. I don't see it there. There's the guide. Maybe it's in the student resources. I want to make sure you guys get this, so bear with me.
So Shakira, how is it going?
They countered, and I'm waiting on the lender to send another call sheet.
Okay. For the other price.
Yes, ma'am. So we're gonna
Okay.
go there today.
Okay.
That's
okay.
awesome. We were bragging on you, Shakira, this week, weren't we,
Oh,
Vicky?
Yes.
We were.
Yes.
We are. Okay,
Yeah.
I found it. It's in the student participation materials, which is in that Google folder, or you can go into KW Connect under Education, and the Ignite 2.0 tab is there. So there will be everything there as well. Okay, so in this, this is the first stage in preparing. So the checklist to prepare to write an offer. So obtain the buyer's pre-approval letter from the lender. That's what we were talking about, Shakira. Your client's offer will be more attractive to the seller if a pre-approved letter is submitted. It also shows you as the professional, and as long as you make sure the step is always taken, you're not having to go back, right? You always want to be proactive. So make sure this happens first. Produce a CMA and educate and inform your buyer. So you'll run a CMA on the property and make sure the list price is matching with the market, and you run the numbers that way. Reviewing the tax record, so you can see any other time that it's been listed, it's been sold. You see a lot of square footage, things that you may not see just on the MLS. You dig a little bit deeper with the tax records. And then you want to ensure the property is still available before spending any time preparing an offer. That's back to that communication, calling that seller, the selling agent, and saying, hey, we're thinking about putting an offer in, is this still available? Even if your MLS says that it's active, you don't know if they've got offers on the table or something like that. So just make sure that you're in communication with the listing agent to let them know your client is considering making an offer. If it's off the market, let your buyer know immediately. So that way you can know what you need to be. You'll start the process over again, right? When you're speaking with the listing agent, you always want to be sure to build rapport and gather as much information about the seller and the property as you can. You want to ask questions of the listing agent and discover what's important to the seller. Find out their time frame, their motivation. This allows you to customize the buyer's offer and address the seller's most pressing needs. Inquiry about activity on the property, such as the number of showings, any other offers to be expected. Obtain a seller's disclosure statement, which provides detail on any physical problems with the property of which the seller is aware, and then find out if there have been other offers. If so, what was the status? What happened? Did they fall through? That will help you. This is a really good tool. I want to make sure that you guys have this, that you're able to use this, because it really simplifies every step of the process. Let's talk about the seller's disclosure, because it's not required by license law. It is a risk management tool. And some brokerages here in town say, we don't do that, okay? Now, what you can do, though, is say, okay, here we're submitting an offer to you. If you get to that point, you are submitting an offer. You submit the offer, you submit along with the pre-approval letter and a blank seller's disclosure, and say the offer, you know, we need this to be filled out as best as possible along with the offer, right? Because then when you get to that point, whether it's a negotiate counter offer situation, your buyer knows more about the property than potentially they did initially. So that's kind of a trick to include that in. Or you can send it over and say, the seller's disclosure, we would like this to be filled out prior to sending in our offer. That gives a little motivation for them to comply. What else can you think of, or what are y'all's thoughts by looking at this checklist?
Katie, can you go back up to the top?
Mm-hmm. There.
Now, the first thing it says to obtain a buyer's pre-approval letter. I mean, I normally already have that.
Right. Right. Before I'm showing property, I'm knowing that you can buy a property.
Mm-hmm.
Some people like to take that risk. To me, I value my time, and this is my business. We talked about that, running it like a business. This is how you need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So this would just be making sure that you have an up-to-date, right? So maybe you've been showing them for a while and they've been your client for a few months. It's got to be a current pre-approval letter. And then Shakira, like we talked about the other day, if your buyer is pre-approved for $300,000, but this home is listed at $230,000 and you're going to put in an offer for $215,000, you don't need that pre-approval letter. It needs to reflect what you're going to offer.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you're showing your hand, and you want to make sure that it's in your buyer's interest that you don't tell them that they can afford more than what they're willing to pay for it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's go back to our PowerPoint.
And another thing as well, Katie, while you're doing that, once I show a client a property and it's that they're interested in, and they tell me they want me to put an offer in on it, when I get back in my car, before I even move, that's what I do. I call the listing agent to make sure the property is still available. And the reason that I do that is because one time I wrote an offer for a property. And when I let the listing agent know it was on the way, they had already accepted a contract. So that's one thing I don't forget to do now, because I felt like I wasted all of that time.
Well, too, they don't have to tell us that they're entertaining offers. They don't have to communicate that with us. They have to tell us when an offer is contingent and pending to go to close. So just remember that. Another good thing to remember too is that doesn't go out to all of the sites and things as quickly. And we already talked about this accuracy. So this is another reason somebody needs to sign a buyer agency agreement with you, so that you can keep them up to date on all these little things that they don't necessarily think about. And we can educate them on that and how that we can lead them to making that home purchase. Because remember what they want. They want the home to be purchased in the price that they can afford and they choose, in the time frame that they choose, and with least problems. And when you're putting in an offer on a property that's already accepted an offer, that's going to cause problems. I don't care if it's your best friend, your mama, whoever, that's going to cause some frustration. So just make sure that you have this checklist, guys, and you're using it. Go ahead and have this. You know, at this point, you should have some materials created for your buyers and for your sellers, and this should be something that you have on hand for every buyer. And this happens with every offer. Each new property, you're doing the same checklist. Anybody have any questions? Okay.
I know for me, this first offer that I'm doing, I kind of lucked up because the seller is also the listing agent. So it's a lot of stuff that she just gave me without me asking anything. So she pretty much gave me all that I needed without having to ask her. So I kind of lucked up now.
You did luck up, because you'll end up in a situation where you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think to do that? But that's all in this preparation, right? We're in this stage of preparation to get that, to write an offer. All right, now we're going to talk about actually writing it. So going back to our handy dandy checklist here, let's see. Here we go. Oh, this is so good, y'all. This is so good. This is great. I'm so glad that y'all have that. So let's see if I can zoom it in a little bit where you guys can see it better. It did pull up over here. I don't know what happened to it. Okay. I'll just read it off for you guys. Okay, price and terms. So this is your checklist for to write an offer. This is going to help you put together an offer that you and your clients can be proud of. This is your chance to shine as a professional. Price and terms. Consult with your buyer to arrive at the most logical offering based on the CMA and all of the items below. Okay, you're not just picking a number, right? The market has to support it. Seller's disclosure. Review this disclosure with your client to find out if there are any deal breakers. Oftentimes what you'll find out, and Vicki, you can agree, there's not a huge amount of valuable information on the seller's disclosure, because oftentimes, especially if you're kind of requiring them to do it, they go NA, and you're going to find more information from that inspection. Yet sometimes you'll get the price of the age of the roof, the age of the larger appliances, like the AC and things like that. Oftentimes this is kind of where you can get that prior to the inspection, and you'll start to learn what those things, the like lifespan of some of those things and what they can commonly cost, so that as you're having that conversation, you can set up that expectation, right? And you want to reflect that in your offer. And it goes back to your buyer's motivation, right? And then conveyances. So consider what times the home will transfer or convey to the buyer. So attached fixtures will stay and movable items go with the seller. In some areas, the seller's disclosure will specify which items convey. These items are up for negotiation. typically that's already in the MLS, what's going to convey with the property. Yet don't assume, here's a tip, I learned this hard way. Don't assume when it's written on MLS, it's going to automatically convey. You need to make sure that's in your offer. And we'll get to that with negotiations. You need to make sure that because it begins a new, fresh offer. That's the listing and shows what can go, but based on what you ask for in your offer. And then your earnest money. The buyer makes a deposit to the seller to show in good faith the transaction. This is a good way to explain it to somebody who doesn't know what earnest money is, right? It's typically deposited in the, well, it's not typically, it is deposited in our escrow account. And it goes to typically the listing agent, although you can choose to put in your offer that it stays with our company and it goes to a trust account. Now here with us, when you're depositing earnest money, you're turning it in up front. There's a form that gets filled out to make sure it's tracked, because every down to the penny, it has to be tracked and either returned or put as part of the closing transaction. Does everybody kind of understand? They feel like they have a good understanding of earnest money? Okay. And then time for seller to accept. Be sure to specify, and this is in the contract, time to accept the offer or counter the offer. It typically gives a timeline in there. And then you're having your financing terms. You're making sure that you know what's going to be agreeable to your buyer and to the seller. So what makes sense, and that's when having a great relationship with our vendor partners and our lenders to understand loan terms and having communication with that lender that your buyer's using, right? Shaquille, that's kind of been a frustration or a hiccup for you with your situation. He's out of state. He's not really familiar with what's happening here. And so there's not that relationship to just pick up the phone and say, hey, can you help me with this? Which a lot of our lenders here in town are wonderful. They're so wonderful. And I'm actually scheduling a Keller Mortgage rep to talk to our office about what they offer too. So you just want to make sure that you are in relationship with somebody that you can have communication with and understand the terminology so that you can then convey that to your buyer and to the seller. Okay, then your pre-approval letter, it needs to go with the offer. We already talked about that. The loan approval, making sure that there's ample time to finalize their financing, and you're gonna, expect no less than 30 days. There's very few instances that it's less than 30 days. So don't, when you put that offer in, go, oh yeah, we'll buy it in 2 weeks. Communicating again with the lender. What does this timeline look like? What's going on with that? Okay, let's see. The closing date. Your closing date should reflect the financing, and then it should also work for the buyer and the lender and everybody involved, the closing attorney. So you need to check and make sure that everything goes well. I will tell you guys, here's something that I didn't realize when I first got into business. You don't have to put the 31st of the month. Actually, the middle of a month is better, because if something happens and gets pushed back, that closing still happens in that month, right? And there's a lot of ways and little kind of tricks that you can apply here, and that we'll talk about more the further you get on in. I don't want to confuse anybody, but that way it actually helps your buyer as far as their first payment and things like that. But you do not have to write the 31st of the month. That's what I was told when I first started selling real estate. Oh, just put the 31st. It's because you don't want it to roll over and add another month. Yet, if it does get pushed out, which, Vicki, oftentimes things do, even a day or two, that will mess the whole thing up. So you can shoot for the middle of the month if that's applicable. Speaking with your lender, speaking with the buyer, everybody's in, having the same conversation. You just want to make sure that that's just a trick and ways to do that. And then the home warranty. So we here at KW Montgomery have to offer our clients, if the seller does not provide a home warranty, and you can ask for that in your offer, right? If that's not provided, we are to offer them, here's a couple of options. And they either have to accept one or waive one. And they just simply initial that they do not want it. So that's for us, for our E&O insurance. And those of you that were on the call with Jimmy Ann the other day for the new contract documents, it's so that your deductible will be waived if there is a legal issue. You won't have to pay that $5,000. So we want to make sure all of our documents are buttoned up, tied with a little bow, and we're good to go. And part of that is offering a home warranty. You don't have to know the ins and outs of home warranties. There are some home warranty companies here that we're in relationship with as an office, and they are wonderful. They have great representation, and they will be more than happy to explain the home warranty. I would suggest you don't go and go, oh my gosh, I need to know everything there is to know about a home warranty. Just like you don't have to know everything there is to know about homeowners insurance, mortgages. You just need to know somebody and be in relationship with them that can explain that. So that if your clients, when, not if, they have questions, you say, oh, well, I would love for you to call Alia, or here you can speak with Jeff, or whoever it is. You want to make sure that you have a list of those people that you can call on. And then repair limits. This is an interesting one, because when you get the inspection back, and I would recommend everybody, have the inspection, you have that conversation that you're going to get a book of pages that where the inspector, it's their job and their due diligence to go through every inch of the home and tell you what could possibly ever go wrong with everything, whether it's a light switch, whether it's a light bulb, whether it's a leaking pipe, whether it's a foundation crack. Set that expectation that you're going to get this booklet, and it's not wise to take the booklet and highlight every single thing that could ever go wrong with the home and then hand that to the seller and say, here, I need you to fix this. No. Okay, we want to first, health and safety. And secondly, it's part of the conversation you're having with your buyer. What are they willing to do for the home? Painting is very simple and very inexpensive. Heaven above, you can replace the light bulb. Light switches. You just want to be able to have that conversation with them. And this is part of, remind them that the seller will most likely be willing to do some sort of repairs, yet they're not going to want to do everything that's in that home inspection checklist, right? So you want to just be able to have that. And those of you that have purchased a home before or that have closed property before, you have to have that conversation. I was not aware of what to expect when the first home inspection came across me, and the buyer wanted to walk through it line by line and talk about creating a list so that the seller could make amends for everything wrong with the property.
But Katie, that does open the door for negotiations, right? From that inspection.
It does. It's part of the negotiation process. Yes, it definitely is. Yet you want to remember and remind your buyer, there are certain things you always want to start with health and safety first. All right, what on here? Because you need to start narrowing it down. You can't just hand them the home inspection back and go, fix it, because they're not going to do that. That's not realistic. So you want to set that expectation that, of course, there are things that you can ask for. But in this is saying, what are you've already had the conversation with the buyer. What are you ready to do yourself? If you come across the perfect home, what are you willing to do for it, right? Of course, if the roof is damaged and the AC doesn't work and all the things, but you will come across, and Vicki, you can back me on this, that all those things will pop up. And you kind of got to get to a point where you can pick what's most important. You have to.
Yeah, because if a buyer really likes a house, basically what you're saying is, will you allow these little small things to be a deal breaker?
Yes. You have to choose what are the non-negotiables. What are things that you're not willing to do? Because you cannot expect the days of the buyer coming in and asking the seller for the moon for everything are very much over, because we are currently in a seller's market. There's low inventory, so that means the seller gets to say, I don't want to do all that. Next.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think it's part of educating our buyers, because they watch HGTV a lot, and they go, oh, well, that person just came in and they said they wanted everything redone and they redid it. That's kind of the fantasy world. We're here in reality and we have to come to the meeting of the mind. So if they do want the carpet repaired, you may come to terms on like a shampooing or a stretching, right? Versus not a replacement. Or if the roof, it says it has a couple of whatever, you can get those things repaired oftentimes by a licensed contract roofer instead of just replacing the whole thing, right? So you just got to look at all that. The good thing about the home warranty is when you have that conversation that several of the things, the systems and things are covered for the buyer. And so that's why you can negotiate the seller potentially paying the $500 or $450 or whatever it is for the home warranty for the next 12 months, because that makes the buyer feel a lot more safe because they're uncertain to how everything works in the home. And they've got this kind of scary, especially if they're first-time home buyers, this scary pack of things going, everything's wrong. It's not necessarily everything's wrong. You just need to narrow it down and say, okay, what are the non-negotiable things? Does that make sense? Okay. And then special, go ahead, Vicki.
Let me just add this in, Katie, because basically what she's saying is if the inspector come in and say this,
Vicki. Can y'all hear Vicki?
unit is 15 years old, but when he checked everything on it, it was meeting the expectations. And so if you look at the age and say you want the HVAC unit replaced, that's not going to work. That's not going to work because it might be a certain age, but it's still doing what it's supposed to do. Nevertheless, if you get in the house and maybe 6 months down the road, the compressor goes out, that's what your home warranty is for. You probably have to pay a small deductible, but they'll take care of that.
All right, let's go back to the PowerPoint and we'll continue our conversation. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So there is creating an offer in Command. Does everybody know how to do that? Do I need to demonstrate that? I can't. Let's see. Do I need to demonstrate that? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Stop share. Okay, so we go into Command. Can you guys see my screen? You see Command? Okay. Go into Opportunities. I'm going to click on one I already have in here. Susan is my buyer. All right, I have uploaded the documents here. Clearly you can see I have not uploaded any documents. Oh yes, I did, one thing. And then you go over to offer. After you submit your docs to the Market Center, you go over to the offer and add a new offer. This will be based on the terms of the contract, okay? So you put the version name, I would just say initial offer, first offer. Initial offer pops up automatically. The offer date, the estimated close date, the property, if it's a KW listing, you select from KWLS. We're gonna say it's 123 Melrose Street. I don't know, it's not valid, okay. This will make you attached to some sort of property. There we go. Go to parties. This is where you add the seller's information as well as your buyer's information. There are some things you can see the little red star that it's required. So you put the other side's the seller listing agent there, and then you go to next. Let's see if it's gonna make me do this. Okay, here's where you put in all of the things. So I can't remember what our offer was, but we'll say it was $12,000. And then she was going to get financed $150,000. So she was paying cash. Her down payment was $12,000. Her finance amount was $150,000. That means the sales price, the offer was $162,000. And you can say the earnest money was $500. Not $50. And then the option fee, you can ignore that. Termination option, you can also ignore that. You can add the seller's cost right here and the closing costs if you wish, but again, it's not making you do that. You do have to do the terms right here, the cash, finance, and earnest money. And then the agent analysis is just where you can write the pros and cons of the offer, and that you can just make sure that you can communicate that, but it's just an optional one you can do. So this is our offer. We wrote the offer, we submitted it to the list agent. Let's say they accept, you click accept, and it opens up the commission tab right here. If they reject it and they counter, you click reject, and then once you receive the counter offer, you put that one in here until there's an offer accepted. Does everybody make sense? Does that make sense to everybody? Everybody good? Okay. So an offer has to be accepted for you to, in this system, confirm your commission request. And then you have to submit that to the office. So there's two things you submit to the office. You submit your documents. You have to submit you have to accept an offer, and then you submit your commission request. But you cannot submit a commission request without having an accepted offer in there. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Well, it's not the PowerPoint. All right, perfect. Okay, offer writing guidelines. Let's see, where are we at here? Okay, so now you have the checklist to preparing an offer. You have the checklist for writing an offer. You want to ensure that your buyer knows that all the checks, earnest money, etc., are written at the same time the offer is written and are deposited upon acceptance. So if somebody thinks, oh, I'm going to submit this offer and I'll get you this earnest money, $500,000, whatever it is, later, that's not how it goes. It has got to be submitted when you submit the offer. And you can submit the offer electronically. You just want to make sure that your buyer is aware that money has got to be submitted immediately once they have accepted that offer. Some people like to go ahead when they're doing the face-to-face conversation where you're writing up the offer. All right, I'm going to go ahead and need that check from you now, so that the agent holds it and controls it. But you do want to make sure that you communicate to them. They know what to write on the check. If they're sending it to the list agent office, which is typical here, they're writing to the agency name, to ABC Realty, and then in the for the property. That makes sure that that check and that amount stays with the property. Okay, so that can be traced. I would have them either scan you a copy of it or take a picture of it and email it to you. Just way you know, and let you know immediately when they submit it, so that you can have a conversation with the listing agent. So if they're going to drop it off in their Dropbox or whatever it may have you then are able to send it to that listing agent and say, hey, my buyer just dropped this off. because Vicki, you'll agree, earnest money sometimes has a way of like flying away. Would you
Yes,
agree
it
with
does.
that?
Yes, it does. And another thing, when I'm at a property with a client and I know this is the house that they're interested in, like I said, when I get to the car, I call the listing agent to make sure it's still available. But nevertheless, when I see this is what they're going to put an offer in, I ask them right then, if you want me to put an offer in on this house, if they accept this offer, are you ready right now to write a check for the earnest money?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's on the weekend, I let them know the following business day, are you ready to write a check for the inspection?
Right.
That way, right. That way you kind of let them know how much money they need to have in the next 24 hours for these two things.
Yeah, because it can come up unexpectedly, and some people don't know that the buyer pays for that inspection, right? So when you're looking at your cost worksheet that you got from your lender, and they say these are the expected costs associated with it, and you're doing that purchaser's estimated net, you are accounting for and letting them know, okay, this is the amount of earnest money you're submitting, and I need that as soon as we turn in the offer. And then the inspection will come right after, and this is a list of inspectors that we need to call right now. You can get their price, and you can get their timeline of availability, right? So that you know however much that costs, and they can be prepared right then and know this is going to be expected of them. And then based on the lender cost worksheet, they know what their down payment is too. So if they're just looking at like a, I don't know, $10,000 down payment, right? They're not thinking about the $1,000 earnest money and the $500 inspection and the, they're not thinking about all the other little things. And you don't necessarily have to be their personal assistant and go, oh, well, you're going to pay for a moving van and this, that, and the other. But you do want to be able to have that conversation saying, as part of this, and that's why you do that buyer consultation, guys, so that you have the conversation more than once, right? So that you can just remind them of what you've already kind of communicated with them. But to set that, now's the time. We talked about earnest money. We talked about that you would be paying for the home inspection if you got one. Now is when that comes to light, right? So that's going to be deposited too. They need to know that money is coming out of their account and going into a trust account. They have got to be aware of that. And then let's see that we talked about the offer inside of that. You can send everything e-signature right now. Authentisign is our best bet. We've still got on our list to check in with DocuSign. We're checking in with them regularly to see when our documents will be available in there. And then when your buyer makes an offer, they're essentially selling themselves to the homeowner. If you were to do a cover letter, some people say recommend that, especially if you're in multiple offers. People like to do like a little letter with it that says, this is who I am and this is why I would like this home. It humanizes the offer. And then the seller of the home, of course, we've said that's their home. So they love it. They have a bond with it. It's very meaningful to them. So that could be, something that to think of when you get a multiple offer situation. Add like a letter from your buyer to the homeowner to create that connection, and it creates more likelihood that your offer will be accepted if the terms are agreeable, right, guys? So don't expect that you can submit an offer $100,000 less than list price and put in a letter and somebody's going to accept that. And then you want to remember to create these people an opportunity in command, which we already talked about doing the offer. So as soon as you've got somebody that you've met with, they've signed the buyer agency, they need to go ahead and be created an opportunity in command so that you then just build on that by your documents, by your offer, and then your commissions. And then by the time it's closed, it's all there for you. Okay. So here's just an example of a cover letter if you were to do one. All right. So what are some buyer objections? What are some objections you guys are hearing right now?
Not wanting to put in down earnest money.
Oh, really? Okay. So how did you handle that, Shacarol?
Well,
Or how
I
do you handle
explained to them that this is just pretty much what happens right now, and it's like you said, it's in good faith money. If you really want this house, let the seller know that you want it. They still didn't want to do it with the initial offer, but of course, the counter offers requested earnest money, and they so they're okay with that right now, but they were just waiting on other numbers. But I don't know if they just want to see if that the sellers would just not say anything about it. But now they see that, hey, I was right and asked you to go ahead and put that out there. Because maybe if you had went a little lower, they would have accepted what you had said.
That's very interesting. So you just communicated with them that, you know, it's part of the good faith offer, right? I mean,
Yes,
it's
and I
part
let
of
them
saying,
know that.
I truly want this, right?
And I did let them know that 9 out of 10 times the seller's going to count that you put down earnest money.
Right.
And they did.
Good. I mean, you got to have some sort of skin in the game, right?
When I told Miss Vicky, Miss Vicky was like, so they're not going to, I said, Miss Vicky, I tried. And they said, no, not right now.
But you got it now, right?
Yeah, she laughed at him.
Well, it's the seller is a agent, right?
Yes.
So of course that she was going to catch that quickly. Which
exactly. And you know,
even if you're not,
they knew.
Yeah, even if you're not an agent, that's going to be something that you're like, what in the world? And I don't know many other places that don't have earnest money, so that can't necessarily be their excuse, right? So way to handle that and get that buttoned up. What's some other objections you guys have heard?
Just people really not, I mean, they want to look at every little thing and say, no, I'm not going to offer them this, that, or the other. They are really lowballing a lot of times, the seller.
So how do we handle that objection, guys? What would you say if you had Vicky's client?
Doing the market analysis, which is what I had to do with my current. Like, I think I pretty much covered the bases with these current clients. I just had to show them, like, hey, listen, the house next door is more than what they're asking for this house. You know, I just had to do the neighborhood analysis and let them know this is the price of this house, this is when it's sold, this is, you know, the comparables to it, and let them know you're going way too low.
That's exactly right. You come back with the facts, right? Go ahead, Vicki.
Well, believe it or not, it doesn't matter. Well, I'm working with somebody right now, and it's almost like they're stuck on a certain amount. And we're looking at different houses. So, you know, my thing is, okay, you got to be realistic. When you're stuck on this price, but you're changing houses and the price in some of them are up much more, or some of them are lower. So it's almost like they're stuck at that price. And I'm telling you, market analysis are so professional to me, because when you begin to show them, and you can narrow it down almost to, okay, we're going to look at houses that has just sold on this street that are so close to, you know, the comparable of this house that you're looking at. And when you show them the CMA, it's almost like, oh, we're getting down to the nitty gritty as to what we're talking about. And they're just so professional to me.
Yeah, that way it's not an opinion, and you're not telling somebody what you think. It's literally the data that's showing them, and you're having them in KW. A lot of times we talk self-discover. You're giving them the facts to allow them to self-discover, but you're also the one in control as far as educating them. You're not going, oh, okay. Well, because what did we talk about? They want as few problems as possible. And if you know the offer is not going to match the value of the home or anywhere close to it, that's going to open up a lot of problems. And if you do that the first time and repeatedly for somebody, maybe the first time, just to like, okay, fine, we cannot come to an agreement. You want to put this offer in, you're going to get laughed at, right, Shakira? The agent's going to laugh at you. They out of due diligence, submit the offer to the seller. They also are going to laugh at you. Maybe you'll get somebody that will counter offer. That's not guaranteed. So this is your opportunity to communicate with the buyer. This is our first impression to the seller. And we want to, this is their home. And how would you think and feel if someone were to come in at this with your home? Would you be, would you feel honored and want to negotiate with them, or would you be insulted and want to move on? Because sometimes you have to have that conversation.
And let me just say this too, Katie, because it is said that you don't put pressure on the your buyers. So the thing is, you have to let them know you're not putting pressure on them, but the market will. And I'm going to give you an example. I was working with a buyer. They had their minds set on a house that they wanted, but they continued to go out and look at other houses. Not only did they lose the house by, keep looking around, they lost, when this corona pandemic came out, a lot of lenders' guidelines changed. They got strict. They lost out on their credit score expired. When their credit score expired and they had to redo it, they didn't meet the criteria. So they can't buy now for like after the summer. They got to go back again and redo everything. So it's not that we put pressure on them. Sometimes it's things that's going on in the market that will put pressure on them. And as my mama say, she old school, she said, bought sense is the best sense. So they learn from what happened to them in the market.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we don't, of course, we want them to get the home for the best price, right? We want that for them. Yet we, as a professional, have to be able to communicate what's happening in the market in a way that they'll understand. And they, God willing, will adhere to our advice, but they may not. Just like Vicky's situation, you're going to come across that where they're like, they just got their head stuck and that's where it is, whether it's a number or a location or a down payment or, all of that. You want to be able to handle that objection. And now, we didn't know that COVID was going to happen. We did anticipate a shift was coming. We did not know it would look like this. And so those terms changed quickly because it became much more of a risk for the financial establishments to loan out money for somebody that may not have a job in a day or two, a week or two. And so those things did change. And there's all these statistics around the credit score versus the payoff and all of that. We don't control any of that, but we are able to say, if this is something that you're passionate about and you love this home, what can stand in your way? Let's look at what's going to stand in your way of owning this home. And sometimes you have to get down to that. Right? You can't always just wait till tomorrow. And some of the objections in the toolkit here are, what if the prices drop and we want to sleep on it? Of course, we want to sleep on it. So, but let's talk about first thing in the morning, making a decision. Let's not talk about looking at other houses. And in the pricing drop, that's where you come back to that CMA. All right, we've already looked at this. The price, it's not like going on clearance, right? So you're looking at the whole picture. Even this talks about interest rates rising. It could raise 1% more from day to day. The terms could change. So if you're already locked in here at this, you don't want to hesitate. Now is not the time to do that. The market does not support kind of lollygagging right now, if you will. You need to create some urgency in what you're telling them. And if they're already at a stage where they're ready, willing, and able, you got to help them get to the place where they can make that move, right? And you go back to their motivation. Remind me again, why is it that you were so excited about moving? Oh, blah, 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 blah. I want to be in this neighborhood, or we're living in a home that's much smaller, or, you know, my kid, I want to get them prepared and have summer here so they can be settled and start school in the fall, or whatever it is. You come back to that. And, you know, there's a bold law that says logic makes you think, emotion makes you act. So you tell them the logic, you tell them the market stats, and then you bring them back to their motivation so that you can bring it back and put it in the ball back in their court. All right, so you want to make sure you have these toolkits, guys, because these have been some incredible resources with all of the objections, with all the checklists, with all the guides. They've been really awesome. So take advantage of that. Let's see. Okay, now we're going to present the offer. What are we going to do first, guys?
Call the listing agent.
Notify the listing agent, right? Vicki, you get in your car, immediately they say, this is the one. Before you ever conduct the offer, you call the listing agent and say, we're probably going to be putting an offer, right? Or we're getting ready to put an offer. Tell me more information. And they'll rattle off, because you know what? If that's a listing agent worth their salt, they want the home sold. So they're going to have that conversation to help you get it sold. Then you send the offer to the agent. Within it, there is a deadline already in our contract. And then you create that offer in Command, okay? And then you consult with your buyer as soon as you get the response back to move along with that process, whether it's been accepted, rejected, or they've countered it. You have to follow along with that. And with your guys' first few offers, every one of you guys are in the PC program, correct? Is that right, all of y'all? So Vicki will be walking you through that. And so you will have no doubt of exactly what you need to do. And so you want to perform these steps in a timely manner. This starts a ticking time clock, guys. So just making sure that you're promptly, and all these checklists are going to help you make sure that you've done this, along with Vicki and the productivity program. You guys are going to not have any problems. So the next thing is to present the offer, role model that. And so I want you guys, we're closing up. We're already over time today, but be sure that you do this, guys. You want to practice a time or two. We've already talked with our script partners. And so this is something you want to add to it. Do a little role play of presenting the offer so that you're more comfortable to this. Now, if you're on the listing agent side of things, you receive the offer, you gather the information about the buyer, and you present the offer to your client, and you respond to the offer. So everybody kind of has a different way of doing this. Yet when you get that call from the buyer agent saying, we're going to put in an offer, some people immediately call their seller to say, hey, we're expecting an offer. I would personally maybe wait till you got the offer. Because who knows what's going to happen between point A and point B. And then if they don't get the offer and they're like, where is it? You have no control over what they do. So you have to communicate every offer that you receive. Yet if you have received notification that you're going to receive an offer, that's not an offer. So you can always convey that you're in communication with several agents, so they've given you positive feedback, and you want to be communicating with your seller. But I would kind of wait until you know for sure you're getting something. All right. And then as soon as you get that in Authentisign, you can definitely, or however the offer comes to you, call, right? Hey, we've got this. This is how you can expect to get it from me. And we can talk through it. And then you're able to respond to the offer. So the goal is to have a meeting of the minds about it. There's also a checklist, guys. Look at this. There's a checklist in your toolkit and in your participation guide about how to review an offer, right? What is number one? Can y'all read that?
Check the address.
Lordy mercy. I can't imagine, but I'm sure this happens where people put offers in on and they got the wrong address, especially with the electronic signing, and it will sometimes will auto populate. So make sure the address is correct. Check to see whether the offer falls in the range of the seller's expectations so that you can have that conversation. Earnest money, right? Shacarol, if you were that other agent, you want to check for that first. The timeline, did they present a pre-approval? And then the terms of the financing, and then the closing date. So as you're talking to your seller, you want to know, or as you're talking to the buyer agent, actually, these are some things you want to know. How long has the buyer been looking? Have they been pre-approved? Do they have a home to sell? If they're from out of town, why are they moving to the area? Why did they select this property? How did they come up with the offer price? And you will be asked, have they made offers on any other properties, and what happened during negotiations? Now, you as the buyer agent don't have to answer all of these questions. You remember that your fiduciary duty is to the buyer, yet you want to give them, hey, if they got a home to sell, that's important. Because likelihood, a lot of people can't buy a new home without selling their old home, right? So that could cause a hiccup. And then pre-approved, that's really huge. And how long have they been looking? If you've got somebody that's been looking for 3 years and they've put in 50 offers, I would be a little afraid of that from the selling agent point of view, right? Because that doesn't really sound like somebody who wants to purchase a home. They maybe like to put in offers. So you guys are not going to have that, of course, because we're doing all of our due diligence to make sure that we have all the consultation conversations and we know that they're ready, willing, and able on the front end. But the more, as the seller agent, the more you know about the opposite person. Same deal as the buyer agent, right? You're communicating with that other agent and having a better understanding. And then to present the offer, you notify the seller. You can use command to communicate the offer with that pros and cons, right? When the offer comes in, you do the same deal. You have to put an offer in and the offer has to be accepted. You update your CMA, okay? Because you want to put it into perspective of today's market, not maybe 2 weeks ago or a month ago or 90 days ago when you listed the property. You have to do a current CMA. And then you're able to have that when you present the offer. Here's the price. Here is where the buyer's coming from. Here are the terms. Here are the contingencies that could pop up. And then you're able to have the conversation with them to allow them to make the decision whether they're going to counter, accept, or reject. All right. And if possible, present the offer in person and so that you can review and respond. Now, a lot of people these days we're not doing a ton of things in person. Yet if you feel comfortable with that, but you can always have a video conference. I've had a lot of phone calls, spent a lot of time on the phone with my sellers, explaining to them, asking them what they want. My routine, the way I do e-signing, is I send a PDF first before I send it to them with the signing blocks. So that because when you send something with somebody with the signing blocks, all it prompts up is the signature. You can't really read it, right? So send them over the copy where you've already made the changes and then let them look at it and review it. Or here is the offer in PDF. And then if you accept that, we'll have a conversation around that. If you accept that, I'll send you the e-signature one. Does that make sense to everybody? Just so it's not a lot of confusion there. When you're looking at the CMA, you want to talk about days on the market, the number of showings you've had, the number of offers potentially that you've had, and then discuss their expectations, right? So then we're going to respond to the offer and you're going to reach a decision. It looks a lot like our other table. They're going to counter the offer, begin negotiation process, accept the offer, which begins the contract to close process, or rejects the offer. And the buyer agent contacts the listing agent contacts the buyer's agent. you learn more about the situation, and you can potentially get to the counteroffer even after an initial rejection, right? You can kind of come to terms. You just want to know if you need to submit a new offer, because sometimes that offer is rejected, you submit a brand new one, right? All right. You'll also want to role play responding to the offer. And I know that's something you guys will do in the PC program, is kind of those objections, how to have those conversations at a high level so that everything can move smoothly through the transaction. All right. What are we thinking, feeling? What actions are we going to take? And what tools are we going to use?
Well, Katie, for me, I know when I get to that point of doing my first one, I'm going to be moving like a 90-year-old. I'll tell you that. I'm going to make sure that, I dot them all and cross them all and check everything just to make sure that I get that first one right.
Yeah. Well, it's really more of creating that habit and following the checklist. That's going to be your system. And everybody works a little bit differently. But what I really loved about this program is all these checklists I wish I'd have had these. Vicki, don't you wish you'd have had these checklists?
Yes.
Because you're kind of going, oh, what does the contract say? How do I explain that? Okay, what timeline was this? And when do I have this conversation? You kind of feel a little discombobulated. But this is a very streamlined thing. One thing you may have noticed about this program and about KW overall, it takes something that can feel very kind of chaotic. Okay, here's the path. A, B, or C. Accept, reject, counter. Like it's all can be narrowed down and simplified so that anybody can understand it. Okay. What else? Give me some other ahas.
Well, I was gonna say, Gerald, you're gonna do that checklist, and they're still gonna ask you questions that you did not think of.
Right.
And my thing is, what I do now is I just let them know, you know what? To make sure I give you the correct answer, let me give you a call back, and I just hang up and call Miss Vicki.
That's the beautiful thing about the PC program, guys.
Yes, it is. Because I was like, all right, Miss Vicki, they said this. Where do I go? How do I answer this? What do I do?
And when you guys, and we can come, when we can come face to face, I know you guys are already doing like group calls, but doing that so you can kind of learn from each other, because it feels really odd sometimes when you're having the conversations first time by yourself, and then you're like, whereas as we're able to see each other kind of going through it, we can go, oh, I remember.
Yes.
He did blah, 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 or we talked about not wanting to do escrow, not wanting to do earnest money, which you typically would not think before you get into real estate that people have the objections that they do sometimes, and they can throw you a curveball.
And Gerald, every transaction is different. So just like Shakira was saying, they'll throw a monkey wrench in there, and there you go. Oh my goodness, I didn't think about that. But that's okay. Once it comes before you, the next time you'll be ready for it.
Exactly. Does everybody think they have a good handle on opportunities in command? How when someone goes from a contact to an opportunity? Because that's something you definitely need to do some made up, do some fake ones, so that you're familiar with how to use it.
And Katie, for the home inspections, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. What's like the average? Because they'll ask like, how much is it? And we can't give them a direct number, but can we give them an average if they ask?
Go ahead, Vicki. I see you.
Yeah, they normally charge per square feet, but okay. I have had clients to have somebody that they knew that was low as $200, but I've had them to go up to $450.
I would say $450, just to I would even say between $400 and $500, just to I would rather estimate more than go, I know it's going to be $100. And then they're like, whoa.
Gotcha.
So you always want to set that expectation And we have that list of inspectors in our documents. It used to be a required thing to have signed. You don't have to have that required and signed anymore, but it's got a link on there where you can find all of the home inspectors in the state of Alabama. That list has about 10 on it. You can quickly call them or have your buyer call them, talk to a couple of them, and get their prices. And that way they're making the decision. You also want to ask about their availability, because if you've got a home, you're putting an offer in and you want to close in 30 days, you typically have 15 days. So can somebody even view the property? They have to see it, they have to inspect it, they have to do a report, and then the report has to come to you or the buyer, and then y'all have to negotiate and figure out what you want. Then you have to submit it back to the seller. So 15 days feels like a long time until you've got so many people trying to have the same conversation. Right?
Gotcha.
All
Gotcha.
right.
Okay.
Well, if you don't have anything else, we've only got 2 more sessions, guys. I'm so proud of y'all. It's been awesome. We're wrapping everything up. I am uploading most of the sessions. I think I've gotten most of them so far on our YouTube. So if there's one you missed, you want to go back. And then you can also access all the material in our Google Drive and in KW Connect. So be sure that you're using these tools.
Katie, will you kind of do a refresher for the bowl? Make sure everybody is on the